What is good, everybody? Welcome back to yet another episode of the Kevoo Bandzz Hoops podcast, man. Back at it again today. It's a beautiful, beautiful Sunday where I'm at. I got a special guest for you guys. Goes by the name of Ersin, one of my favorite people in the world to talk about basketball all the way out in Amsterdam, man. Ersin, how you doing, man? Introduce yourself to the
Uh,
people. Tell them what you
Man,
do.
I'm
How
doing
you doing.
great, man. Kev, thanks for having me, my brother. I love listening to your podcast. And now it's my first appearance here, and I love talking college basketball with you, man, especially in terms of knowledge, how deep your knowledge goes, in terms of players, in terms of the game evolving throughout the years. And I'm ready to talk hoops, man. Let's do it. And you can
Yes, sir,
find
man.
me, on Twitter at @edemernba. The people that know me know I tweet about basketball nonstop, man. That's my thing.
Yes, sir. And to be specific, his Twitter is again Demir is Demir, and then NBA spells for itself. But man, whew, so this all season, it's been a lot. College basketball world, the all season literally does not stop. There's been a lot going on. The transfer portal literally does not sleep. There's so many guys going from different schools. Sometimes I can't even keep up with it just because it's so much movement that it's kind of crazy. Like I didn't even know Dale Bonner left Baylor. He's at Ohio State now. Jordan Geronimo left Indiana. He's at Maryland now. Like it's so many moves that you can't even keep up with it until the actual games start, which actually start in a few months. Luckily, I cannot wait for this season. It's gonna be very exciting. But before we get into some teams and how you're feeling and certain players here and there, I got to ask you about the influx of European players or overseas players as a whole coming over from their individual countries and coming to the states to play college basketball, because we see it here and there. Like last year you had Baba Miller. You have a couple interesting cases, but this year it felt like more than ever. You had Kansas had an overseas player, you had Kentucky had an overseas player, you had UCLA add multiple. So why do you think that is, and what do you think the biggest reason for that is?
Well, when it comes to those players, they have a tough decision to make early, man, in Europe because playing time is scarce. And on the other hand, if they want to focus on their academic stuff, it's very limited. So, and in terms of money, you have to be lucky as well. For example, one of the top prospects, Baba Miller, Jan Vide, they play for Real Madrid. They're the best youth development in Europe. So they have more opportunity. They can be loaned out to other teams. They'll find their way eventually. But I think for me, the biggest game change is NIL. It's an easy answer, but in terms of where a prospect comes from, and with the rules of NIL, they can make a lot of money, man. And they can play college basketball for 4 seasons. They get a scholarship. They go to school for 4 years. I think the biggest winner outside of the players getting paid, which they should have done a bit earlier than this, but overall in terms of the international players, they have two decisions now, man, because they most players didn't want to play college basketball because of the level of difference between the play style. Most guys fear that they are taking a step back without getting the benefits of it. But now with the NAL deals, I think players are more and more being pushed towards the states, play themselves, into a new market, perhaps for the NBA, instead of hoping that the team you're playing for is going to play you 10 minutes, 12 minutes a night, or loan you out to a team. Usually they play a division lower, so I think in terms of level of play, maybe it's not the same what they expect, but overall in terms of the development, academically, making bread early in their career, and even if they finish their 4 year career in the United States, they can always come back to Europe, and have a head start. So I think the biggest winner of that NAL deal is European players, man. I think this is not a 1 year done deal. I think this is going to happen every year, where the top prospects are going to move to the United States to play here instead of in Europe.
No, I love that too. As you mentioned, these dudes should have been getting paid years ago, a long time ago. I'm glad it's opened up doors because I honestly, like when NIL first broke, I'm not gonna lie to you, I wasn't even thinking about the opportunities that it presented for overseas players like that. Like to be honest, I just thought American. I'm American. We kind of stubborn. We selfish in ways, so I wasn't really thinking about like that. But I love it because as you just mentioned two names, John Vide and Aday Mara, both going to UCLA. I want you to talk about them because first of all, they're both really good. I think Vide has a chance to be really, really good as a freshman. Could be a one and done. I would love personally if he stayed for 2 years, but I can see him being a one and done. Even though Mick Cronin, he don't really give too many opportunities to freshmen. We seen it last year with Amari Bailey, but looking at this UCLA team, I want you to first again talk about those first two freshmen, but they lost a lot. You know, they lost Tiger Campbell, 4-year starting point guard. They lost Jaime Jaquez. They lost Davis Singleton. They lost a lot of talent. Amari Bailey, as I just mentioned. So talk to me about both those two freshmen. Of course, Vide is from Slovenia. I watched him play in the FIBA games a couple months ago. He killed Team USA, even though they didn't win, but he's just a different player. And then Mara, I actually watched him play a couple years ago. I believe the games were actually down in Spain. I want to say it was U18. He played against Jeremy Fears, Cooper Flagg, a lot of really talented players on that team, Ron Holland as well. So talk to me about those guys and what they bring to UCLA in year one, or can bring to UCLA in year one.
Well, actually, I'm happy that Coach Cronin went to get some European guys, because if you look at UCLA's game, it's all pick and roll minded, man. The pick and roll coverages are important to big men. And, creating for the pick and roll is important for point guard. And looking at Jan Vide, the game from a couple of years ago against Team USA was really a wake up call for him, man, because he was always the top prospects in Europe, one of the best prospects, especially as a guard. And he was killed in that game against Team USA, man, in terms of level of athletic difference. And these guys were better, and that's okay because he made up for it in the last game against Team USA. As you say, man, he really made Team USA work for their victory. So, but with John Vide, I think UCLA is getting a terrific pick and roll playmaker, man. He's so crafty. I think he reminds me a bit of. I don't want to compare these guys, but how Doncic used to play when he was younger. In terms of
Yep.
he's not athletic, but how he uses his unathletic tools, despite he's still able to create separation with his craft. I think he has a very high basketball IQ. I think that he has to be, if he wants to be a leading point guard, he has to have that. But what stood out to me most is how he's reading the game, man, as the ball handler, as the pick and roll creator, especially with college basketball having a 30-second shot clock. And some teams like to play it slow. I think UCLA is going to be one of those teams. I think he's going to be the leader from day one, man. And people want to hear about the NBA as well. I'm a bit skeptical for him being a one and done because if you look at his jumper, it's not good, man. Especially with the changes in college basketball. For example, Tyrese Proctor had the same last year in Duke. The jumper took some time to translate to the collegiate level. I think Jan Vide is going to struggle on that part early on as well, but he's going to be their leader, man. And I think with Tiger Campbell leaving, Amari Bailey was unlucky, man, because if he went to UCLA 1 year later, it was his starting gig. But now Jan Vide is getting it. So I think UCLA fans should be very excited with Jan Vide. Take him some time, especially if the jumper does translate early. Is not any room for concern or any concern needed, to be honest. And I think Mick Cronin found his guy, man, because Tiger Campbell, he's playing in Europe, right, by the way, right now. I think he went to France. He turned a pro. And Mick Cronin, he found this pick and roll playmaker, man, and that's the biggest fundament for him to operate this game, which is, I think, is UCLA's MO in college basketball with the way he plays, and he always stays with it. So I think it opened the door for Vide as well because he's going to a situation where the system is basically built for him. And I think in terms of coming to Aday Mara, man, I'm really high on him, man. Outside of the profile, I think when you're 7 foot, you have some ball skills, and then immediately people are comparing to the unicorn or Porzingis. But I think with Mara, the biggest plus, which they didn't get from Bona, is his passing, man. His playmaking via the post, his playmaking, in the short roll a bit as well. I don't think he's going to be impacting the UCLA offense early on. And I don't really think he's going to, play as a starter either. I really been struggling with that idea because if you put Bona and Mara on the floor at the same time, it's going to look a bit silly. What I think is going to happen is that what we saw at UConn, Donovan Clingan, 12 to 15 minutes off the bench, and Bona being their starter, man. I think that's the system that UCLA should roll with. And in terms of his draft potential, yeah, Barna is going to be one and done. But he doesn't have to play 30 minutes a night to showcase his talents. But I think in his rim protection and his passing, man, it's going to open a lot of doors for UCLA, man. I think at that size and what he does at that age, it's special. But, in terms of international incoming class, UCLA, yeah, I think they have the best recruiting class in terms of international guys by far, by
Hmm.
far.
Yeah, so I mean, Mara, as you mentioned, that passing ability, his feel for the game is ridiculous. Like he knows where the defense is going to be at all times. Very patient. You could put him on a whole bunch of different parts of the floor, and he's still going to be able to make high level plays. Like he's a special talent. I agree with you. I think both of them, to me, like as you've probably noticed too, like the past few years, you're noticing teams in the NBA, they're not just focusing on drafting one and done guys. You've seen Jaden Ivey was a 2-year player, Johnny Davis 2-year player, Ben Mathurin 2-year player, Jaime Jaquez was a 4-year player. So like I really want college kids to understand that you don't have to rush the process. You don't have to be a one and done player. Like teams are valuing taking guys that have stayed a little bit in college because as long as you're developing, you're gonna get your money. You're gonna make the most of your time. You're gonna get to the NBA. So I love that for UCLA. They also added two other guys, I should say. Berke Bayuktin, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He's out of Turkey. And then Elon Fible, a 6'6 shooting guard out of France. Both of them are going to be very intriguing pieces. But the overall team dynamic at UCLA is going to be very, very intriguing to me because as I mentioned, like Mick Cronin doesn't like to play through his freshmen like that. He has a hard time running through newer guys. And so to me, I do think for UCLA to be at their best this upcoming 23-24 season that Jan Vide is going to have to be the primary guy. But I think at the beginning of the season, they're going to try and run their offense through Dylan Andrews and then Adem Bona. But ultimately, I think once they see how good Vide is, he's just going to take off and they're not going to look back. So I'm very excited to see what UCLA does. I'm gonna definitely go to some games. I'll definitely be at the UCLA versus SC game. That's gonna be jam packed. I can't wait for that game. But man, I gotta ask you about some individual teams that you're looking forward to. You know, we both are Michigan State supporters. We excuse me, we got championship aspirations. I can't wait to see what we do. But just talk to me about certain teams that you like to watch, certain coaches that you appreciate, just some of your favorite college basketball, people.
Yeah, man. When it comes to college basketball, I'm a big fan of the ACC this season. Wake Forest for me is a team to watch, man, because as you know, I'm high on Hunter Salas for 2 years now, and I continue to being high on him, man, because I'm very happy that he chose to go there, man. I think Coach Forbes is a great coach for him. I think he's going to unleash him, and in terms of what they expect from Salas, I think he's one of the two starting guards without a doubt. But he has to find his game, man, because he played 2 years in a limited role, and at high school level, it was all his show, And he has to find a balance because he's not going to get the ball full time, and he's not going to be a spot up shooter or a wing defender. So that's the early challenge for him, for Salas. And what I also like is, they have that other guy, Damari Monsanto. I like him a lot, man. As you say, guys stay in college they will get drafted eventually. I think the Damari Monsanto is going to be a guy that a lot of people who cover the draft are going to eventually mention as a possible prospect because I like it. I think he's one of the best shooters in the country by far, in terms of mechanics, in terms of how he gets open. It all clicks. But in terms of depth, that's what I worry about with Wake Forest. They had the transporter hard, but for Coach Forbes, it's the challenge to make it a team, man. Because I like that. I like that talent on their roster a lot. They also added some another guy from Denmark, Marquise Mary Mitrovic. I think he's partially Serbian, I think, and Danish. Doesn't really matter, but 6'7" guy with ball skills. I think he's mainly going to play as a spot up shooter, but in terms of the frame, is a strong frame. I think he's going to adapt early to the physicality of college basketball. So that's a guy to keep an eye on. But overall, in terms of I don't know if you can call them a mid-major or not, but considering that mid-major, they're one of my favorite teams to follow, man. And another one is, as you say, Michigan State. So title aspirations, a team being ready, but I can name a bunch of them, man. I think these two are the most important ones: Michigan State and Wake Forest.
Man, so you said well Wake Forest. We'll talk about Michigan State, but with Wake Forest, I mean, I when they hired Steve Forbes a couple years ago, I love that move just because he had so much success at Eastern Tennessee State that it was obvious in my opinion, right? He plays a pro style type offense. Again, you're in the ACC. If you're in the ACC, you want to play against Duke, you want to play against Carolina, you want to play against Miami, you want to go to Louisville when Louisville's good, you want to play Florida State, but honestly, I just appreciate Steve Forbes. You've seen Alondes Williams have success. You've seen a couple other guys come out of there and be successful already. Like he's only been there for, I want to say this is like year 4, maybe year 5. I could be wrong, but he hasn't been there for that long, and he's already made a major statement in a state that literally has 2 blue bloods in the same state within not even too far from them. So I give him a lot of credit. But let's touch on my Spartans real quick, man. I ain't gonna talk about them too much. We're gonna say them. I'm gonna have an episode strictly just for them in a couple weeks that'll come out. But because Ersin's here, we gotta touch on them. AJ Hoggard's back as a senior. Tyson Walker's back as a 5th-year senior. Jaden Akins is back as a junior. We add in a star-studded freshman class that features Xavier Booker, Jeremy Fears, Garrick Norman, and Cohen Carr. How you feeling about us? How you feeling about what we brought in, what we brought back, and just overall, what's the temperature check? I know you said national championship aspirations. That's definitely the goal. It's no Final Four. Like we want a chip. We need Tom Izzo to get his 2nd championship. But overall, just how you feel about the team and the roster as a whole.
Man, I like this team, man. I think this is the team that's going to make AJ Hoggard an NBA player. I think if you look at NBA teams, experience, man. That's what matters. Pickett, and the year before, I think it was Nembhard, right? Hoggard is going to be next, man. Early 2nd round pick, going to impact on day 1. But in terms of, the team, there's one concern, I think the center position, but that's a concern for a couple of years now, and rebounding. I think those 2 concerns are the main ones for me. But in terms of, how they play, the defensive schemes, I think their offensive spacing, I like it a lot too. I think it's going to matter about if they play just like last year, but they made shots, just like, we saw Michigan State do, especially later on in the season. And in the NCAA tournament, they look promising, but in terms of depth, that's why Michigan State lost that thing. And with the incoming freshman class, especially with Xavier Booker, who's going to be, I think, a 2 or 3 year guy, but he's going to be one of the best big men in college basketball if everything clicks. He's going to be the X factor for me, man, because if he can adapt early on and maybe, make Michigan State less reliant on Manu Sissoko, so I think Michigan State is going to be a lot more dangerous than we also think right now. But I think he's the X factor for me, man, Xavier Booker. I don't think he's a bit raw right now, but that's okay, man, especially for freshman centers. That's one of the toughest positions to fill in immediately, So, and I don't want to raise the bar for him, but he's a 5-star and he has to, make true to his potential. And I think he chose the right program, but it may cost some time, man. But I think that's going to be the X factor, to be honest.
To me, the X factor is going to be Cohen Carr just because he has that 1% type athleticism, right? You can't find his leaping ability anywhere. It's a rare attribute. You can get him on the fast break. He'll dunk on you. He'll get offensive rebounds, second chance opportunities, everything, right? I think for him to come off the bench and back up potentially Malik Hall is going to be big. And with Xavier Booker, I kind of look at Xavier Booker the same way that you do Aday Mara, in the sense that he is kind of skinny. He's a freshman, especially in the Big Ten. I feel like being a center freshman in the Big Ten is harder than any other conference because the Big Ten, as we know, they love their centers, right? Last year, you had Zach Edey, you had Trey Jackson Davis, you had Hunter Dickinson. It's always a top center in the Big Ten. So it's a hard thing to do. But when you mentioned the weaknesses, I agree. I think ever since COVID hit, I feel like the pillars of our program that made Michigan State basketball are defense and rebounding. And we have not been good at that in the past couple years. We were an okay defensive team last year, but as you mentioned, without the depth like that, our guys were tired. They were fatigued because they had to play so many minutes, right? And so with that added depth, Trey Holloman's back. I think Carson Cooper is going to be really good as a sophomore. Jackson Kohler should be a little bit better too. I think offensively he's going to be really good. Defensively, we'll see. I'm hoping for the best, but Carson Cooper probably ends up being our best center. It's nothing against Mady Sissoko. He's just kind of raw. Doesn't really have the best hand-eye coordination. He's a physical body, which I do appreciate him for that, but good shot blocker, but he just got to get a little bit more discipline. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm going to go on a quick rant real quick about AJ Hoggard because I feel like a lot of people, and I love that you said that about him because a lot of Michigan State fans included have disrespected AJ Hoggard for pretty much his entire career, right? I look at it like this. His freshman year was COVID. I can't even blame him for that. The entire world was just in a weird place right there, right? Sophomore year, the Max Christie year, I blame that entire season on Izzo just because the team had good players, but Izzo and the coaching staff, they didn't put them in the right positions to succeed. You try to put the entire offense on the shoulder of Max Christie. Then you try to give it to Gabe Brown. That's not really his game. Then you try to give it to Joey Hauser. Like that team was just, it was a weird blend of talent, but they could just never figure it out. And honestly, AJ Hoggard should have started for that team instead of Tyson Walker. One. Then his junior year, which was last year, to me, he was good. He was really good. He was the only player, in my opinion, that went and outplayed Jalen Pickett at Penn State. How many point guards can make that claim? He big body Terrance Shannon Jr., which is not easy to do. He won us the game at Wisconsin. To me, when you look at AJ Hoggard's career, of course, it's not done at Michigan State, but like when it comes to our big time games, he usually shows up. The only big time game that he hasn't shown up in was the Kentucky game last year at the Champions Classic. But you go back to his sophomore year against Purdue in the Big Ten tournament, he was our best player. When we lost to Duke, when they had Paolo that year, he was our best player. Last year, when we lost to Kansas State with Marquise Noel, he was our best player. Like when it comes to big time moments, AJ Hoggard shows up, right? And I feel like a lot of MSU fans take that for granted. And as you said, with his senior campaign going up this year, I think he's going to staple himself as like a legendary Michigan State point guard. I'm not saying he's Magic Johnson. I'm not saying he's Cassius Winston. I'm not saying he's Mateen Cleaves. But I do think he has a chance to really etch his name into MSU history as like a top tier point guard. So I had to get that off my chest because I haven't really talked about that much. But to me, AJ is one of the best playmakers in the country. I think he is a top 5 point guard, no bias in the country, in my opinion. So I had to say that real quickly. But
Facts, bro. I agree, man. I agree.
they disrespect him, man. I don't know what it is. Like, he's so talented. He's a big body. He's 6'4". He's strong as I don't know what. He can post up. People think his jump shot is bad, but I disagree. I just think, people, when they see people that don't shoot, like, for instance, Jimmy Butler, my favorite player, right? He doesn't even attempt 3-point shots in the regular season. So people automatically think that he can't shoot. But come playoff time, he starts to shoot the three more. And then you can see, like, oh, this guy actually can shoot the ball. AJ's kind of like that too. He doesn't want to shoot. He wants to post you up. He wants to get into the lane. He wants to make plays for others. The last thing on his mind is shooting the ball. So I just want people to understand, like, AJ Hoggard is a rare breed type of point guard. And for all my Spartan fans listening to this, please do not take him for granted because he is a special player. But I just had to say that real quick. So let's get back. I want to ask you about some of the best returners in the country because to me, you got Jaden Akins, you got Trey Alexander, you got Oso Ighodaro. So just talk to me about some of the return players that probably could have put their name into the NBA draft this year, but they decided to come back to school and play college basketball next season.
Well, one of them is Terrance Arceneaux. I think he's my favorite one from Houston. I think he's going to have an expanded role more as a playmaker too. I think I don't know where they played, but I saw purely looking at the box scores. Last year, he barely had an assist. And when I looked at his game, from the assist, it was mostly as a ball mover, not as a playmaker. But this year at Houston, with Sasser gone, I think he's going to share the playmaking duties with Shed. I think that's going to be the next part of his game because if you look at his purely at his profile, I think he's the ideal NBA wingman, especially with some more usage. I think he can be a high tier scorer in the NBA as well. But his game is a bit raw. But in terms of the potential, in terms of the body, in terms of how he plays on defense, I think he has all the tools to be a first round pick very easily. He's my favorite guy, Terrance Arceneaux, to follow. And for that reason, I'm going to follow Houston a lot more as well. I think he is one. Another one is, I'm looking forward to Syracuse, man, because Junior Mintz, to me, was easily a first rounder last year. But in terms of what is difference between him and guys like, for example, Cam Thomas or Nick Smith Jr., those high tier scorers out of high school, what is he going to do when the scoring isn't helping him? I think that's the biggest question that he didn't really answer at Syracuse. Not because he can't, but because the context wasn't good for him. He was asked to carry the scoring load instead of being the true point guard, involving his teammates, involving, his playmaking, showcases other skills as well. So I think he was in a bad situation. That didn't really help him. But now with JJ Starling in the backcourt, I think that changes the game entirely for him because you can rely on JJ in terms of the scoring, and he can show that he is an NBA point guard to really show NBA team what the potential is. I think those two guys are the main ones for me. And I think the third one is, well, my thing is I don't want to talk about the mainstream guys. That's my thing. I always focus on the sleepers. But in terms of the third one, I don't know. I had his name in mind, but I think we'll get to him later, man. Because those two, I think it's enough for me. So
Yeah, so I like both those guys a lot. Arceneaux, to me, as you said, year two, Kevin Sampson does a great job when it comes to development. The Cougars are going to the Big 12. They're leaving the Americans, so they're going to be in a war zone when it comes to conference play. I expect them to be top. Honestly, I think they should be like top three, top four in the Big 12 because you look at Kansas, of course. You look at Texas should be good. I think a sleeper team is Iowa State. I've been telling people that like Iowa State can be really good, but like when you look at Houston, you bring in LJ Cryer from Baylor, you bring back Emmanuel Sharp, you bring back Jamal Shedd, you bring back a couple big men. They got a team, man. Damian Dunn from Temple's a really good player too. But honestly, like if they want to be the best version of themselves, I think Terrance Arceneaux has to be like the go-to guy, the go-to scorer for them. He's that good. He's that talented, as you said. Like big upside wing, really good off the bounce, can catch and shoot too. Like really, really good player too. And for Syracuse and Judah Mintz, I'm excited to see them play. Like what is Syracuse basketball without Jim Boeheim, right? It's the first year we're going to see Syracuse without Boeheim, which is crazy to think about. With Coach K leaving Duke, Roy Williams leaving North Carolina, you had Jay Wright leave Villanova not too long ago. Like college basketball is in a weird phase right now, but it's exciting to see at the same time. But Syracuse can be a sleeper team in the ACC, man. As you said, JJ Starlin, Judah, Chance Westry came over from Auburn. We're going to see what they do. I don't think we're going to see as much 2-3 zone as we once did, but Syracuse can be good, man. So we'll definitely see. I like both those answers a lot. But getting to my next question, Kentucky. I gotta ask you about the Wildcats, man. I gotta ask you about John Calipari's Kentucky Wildcats. They also added in a guy from Croatia who goes by name, I believe it's pronounced Zvonimir Ivisic, if I'm not mistaken. I believe that's the best I could do. But 7-1 center, again, from Croatia. He was a late add to a pretty stacked Kentucky team that already has Ugana Kingsley, that has Aaron Bradshaw. You bring in Trey Mitchell from West Virginia after the whole Bob Huggins situation. So talk to me about Ivicic and this entire Kentucky team as a whole with DJ Wagner and Rob Dillingham and Reed Shepard and what's your expectations for them, shall I say?
man, regarding Ivisic, I'm high on him for 2 years. But if you look at his game, it's all over the place, man. He's one of those guys with a clean blueprint. He has all the tools, but what type of player is he going to be? That's the question. Over 7 foot, he can dribble, pass, and shoot. I think the handles are surprisingly good for his size, man. Because if you look at it, I think that was the first thing that's going to pop, especially later on in the the current season that we just closed. His team, he played in ABA league. It's not a good league, but it's stacked with talent, with young talent. And later on in the season, he got starting to get starting gigs, starting to play serious minutes, and he had a great scoring run in the playoffs, which was for him, I think, the highlights of his career so far. But his game is very raw. I think in terms of what they expect from him in college, struggles early on. I think he is too skinny to adapt fairly quick. I think the physicality of the game is going to cause him some problems early on, but that's okay because that's the first thing that we expect from a guy that's coming over from Europe. Some guys they just get over it immediately, and some guys they take time. So I hope the Kentucky fans will give him time. And knowing Kentucky fans, they are not very patient, so I don't think it will work in his disadvantage. But and in terms of the roster, I know what their plan is, man, because Bradshaw, you going on Jensa, you have Ivisic. What's the difference with Ivisic is he's a very good screener and as a pick and pop option. But with the way Calipari is playing, I don't know if he's going to run sets like that, man. So he's a bit of odd man out for me because I don't know what Calipari has in mind for him, but Calipari is going to try something new. I think he has to because when's the last time Calipari recruited an international player? I think we have to go way back, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
mostly the domestic talent for him. So I like it a lot, man. It really excites me because he's a guy I was high on in the last draft as a draftable guy. But next season he has the potential to maybe be a late first round pick if everything clicks at Kentucky. that he can show he can adapt early on, fairly quick. And with him, it's mostly tools, man. In terms of production, I'm not really seeing a star level player in him, to be honest. I think if Bradshaw is healthy, it's his gig to go. But Ivisic is going to contribute as a floor spacer, as a shooter, as a screener, those three things. But as a defender, I think his timing with his shot blocking and his rim protection, I think that's going to stand out, man. But he has to with that size. That's one of the main things that he has to do. And overall, I'm excited, man. But I'm a bit cautious with moves like that, especially knowing how Calipari coaches. So I'm just in a wait and see moment because I'm not really sure what type of role they're going to give him.
I agree because as you mentioned, like Calipari, he doesn't even really run sets like that. And I'm pretty sure Vicic is probably used to just running a whole bunch of really, complex sets. But Cal, he just likes to run like NBA actions, like basic down screens, get a guy, rolling to the rim, get a guy curling off a screen and getting the pull up jumper from the mid range. Like it's very, very simple and very basic. And that's why I think some freshmen in recent years have struggled with it just because it's so easy to guard that you're not really exerting all your effort and energy on defense to guard it because it's not difficult. It's not like you're playing against Purdue or Creighton or Virginia Tech where they run like high level plays, and even Vanderbilt with Jerry Stackhouse, they run like crazy sets, right? So we'll see. Um, the team as a whole, a lot of people didn't like it at first, and they went to Global Jam up there in Canada. They won. A lot of people kind of changed their tune. Me personally, I said it on a couple episodes ago when it came to Tennessee. Like Baylor won the Global Jam last year. Baylor, they were okay. Like they never reached their full ceiling. Those three guards, as good as they were between Cryer, Adam Flagler, and Keontae George, they never really reached their best as a team. Like they were okay, right? And so a lot of people kind of changed their tune with Kentucky based off that. And like, yeah, they are good. But when I look at the SEC, you got Alabama, you got Arkansas, you got Tennessee, you got Auburn. I know you like Denver Jones. I want to ask you about him too, coming over from Florida International. But like SEC is stacked, and Kentucky is a young team. So let's go to Auburn real quick though, just because, right? Bruce Pearl has had a lot of success there. They bring in Aiden Holloway. I think Trey Donaldson, who was a freshman last year, he'll be a sophomore this year. I think he's probably the most underrated guard, probably not even just in the SEC, but in the entire country. If I'm being honest, I feel like he's getting slept on. I know Aiden Holloway is good, but like Trey Donaldson had some big time moments for them last year as a freshman. So I'm looking forward to him. But just talk to us real briefly about Denver Jones and the acquisition that he should bring to a pretty good War Eagle Auburn team.
Well, with Denver Jones, to be honest, man, I think it was 1.5 years ago, 18 months ago, something like that. And I was looking for guys to watch, especially in terms of, the low majors. Okay, who's going to be the guy that's at least going to hit the transfer portal and he's going to get good offers? I think Denver Jones is one of them. I think he's a bucket, man. As easy as that. In college basketball, you need those guys. But he has that flair to his game, man. Good size. He has tight handles. I think that's a very rare commodity nowadays, especially in college basketball amongst guards. I think those two things were the first things that, from the limited films that I could find because for the international, I don't know, I can't remember which conference they play in, but the level was not good. But that guy, that popped out immediately, man. You don't have to be an expert to see that guy can ball, man. That he had no business there. He should be at the bigger school. And I think last season was 20 points a game, something like that. And after
Mm-hmm.
a while, I lost track of him, but I think he's just a bucket, man. He just reminds me of street ball, tight handles, different varieties to score, especially inside the arc. With nowadays, everyone talks about shooting so much. Okay, shooting is important. I'm not gonna act like it isn't, but if you can shoot, there's not 50% of the job done. That guy's shot needs some work, but in terms of the total package, even if he doesn't have a shot, have a jumper, he's easier to guard. He's going to find his spots, man. I think that's special, especially if teams crowd the paint around him, or make it tougher for him to get downhill. He's one of the guys that he's going to make it happen. But for him, I don't. I hope for him that he's going to take it slowly, adapt to the level first because playing at Florida International now and Auburn is a big difference. But down the stretch, especially around New Year, he's going to be. I think he's going to carry the scoring load for them, man.
I'm excited to watch him. I'll be honest, I haven't seen too much of him. Again, I do like the makeup of this Auburn team. Last year, they were okay. The decision makers that they had, it's nothing against Wendell Green. He was just too sporadic. He was too up and down. Bruce Pearl probably gave him a little bit too much freedom, in my opinion. But KD Johnson kind of like the same thing. But guard play should be a little bit better. I like Jonai Broom. I like Jalen Williams. They should have a pretty good team in the SEC. But I want to go to the NBA real quick. I want to ask you, I'm going to throw you on the spot on with this one, but I want to ask you your favorite sophomore going into next season, right? This upcoming draft class was pretty good as rookies. Me and you are both high on Ben Mathurin. I love his game a lot. Of course, you got Şengün, who I think you probably agree, but I think Şengün could be an NBA All-Star one day down the line. But
Yeah.
who do you think? Who do you think has a major jump in their second year in the NBA?
Oh man, I gotta think about it a bit, man. But when it comes to, I don't think he's really. Yeah, man. I think opportunity to play. He's not a sophomore, but it's really messed up his career, man. And I think eventually he's going to be get traded, and there's going to start. I think Brandon Boston Jr. I think he's the guy that it's hoping, it's wishful thinking from one thing, but I think he has the potential to still. I think if you look at my Twitter, you look at Brandon Boston Jr. and All Star, you find a couple of tweets. That's how high on him. I am so, but in terms of opportunity to play, man, it hasn't really helped him. He dominated the G League, but you can't put him in the G League for 3 seasons. I hope that the Clippers trade him, or at least give him some minutes that he can show something. But he's one of the guys that he's if he's on a trading block and some teams buys in low. For example, the Raptors, they value size, they value multi-positional guys, and ball handlers like that. He's a good landing spot for him. But another one is, if you look at purely looking at, in terms of, talent, I gotta think about it, man, because I have a few guys in mind. I don't want to make it so guard heavy. I'm thinking about the centers a bit too, So let me think about that one, man, for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, no, take your time. When it comes to Brandon Boston, though, like I'm a big fan of his too. I really liked his game at Kentucky. I know that was a crazy year. Of course, rest in peace to Terrance Clark. But
Yeah,
to
man,
me,
rest in peace.
man, the Clippers, as you mentioned, they just have so many of the same type of guys at the same position, right? You got a whole bunch of wings, right? You got, of course, Kawhi, Paul George, Terrence Mann, Nicholas Batum, Norman Powell, like Eric Gordon. They just have so many guys. It's just like he's the odd man out. He as you mentioned, if he can get traded anywhere, shoot, I'll take him in Miami. Honestly, we develop real good. I'll take him. We need any type of additional scoring boost that we could possibly get. I wouldn't mind that whatsoever. So I'm hoping that he can get up out of there just because, again, it's so many guys already ahead of him, and they're not really thinking about trying to build up their young talent because they got Kawhi and PG, and they're about to open up a new stadium very soon, arena soon. So they're trying to sell tickets, and he got to get out of there. It's places for him in the league too, like an underrated one. I like to see him probably shooting even Indiana with the Pacers. They a young team trying to figure it out. They can use any help they can. Of course they just drafted Jarris. Tyrese Halliburton's a star. Ben Mathurin we just touched on should be the starter next season. So I mean, we'll see, man. I like BJ Boston a lot, but he just got to get out of LA. The Clippers is just
Yeah,
not
man.
the place for him at all. So, I mean,
Yeah, I feel for him, man, because it made sense for him. He was the draft late in second. He got guaranteed money. He got his bread, and you can blame him because he's working hard, man. Especially if you compare him from when he ended the league and as of late, that body is ripped, man. He's worked on his body so hard. I think in terms of the confidence, I think of course he had a rough season at Kentucky, man. You don't wish something like that on anyone, man. But he fought back, man. Look at it. His dedication to the game is something that
exactly.
you have to respect. So the intangibles with him is great, man. I think if especially Miami, I would love that for him. I think early on he has to adapt to the system because I think in terms of organized basketball, it's been all over the place, man. G League, first team, he didn't play, comes back to the G League. I think the Clippers were just by default sending him to the G League, but don't have a plan for him. So I think in terms of long term potential, he's one of those what if guys. What if he went to the right team? that at least give him some minutes, he would have a whole different career, man. But I would love it for in Miami, man. Just like you say, just buying cheap, and a guy like that can't go wrong.
Yeah, man, we wishing the best for him again. Just please, Clippers. If you're the Clippers, if y'all listen to this, Jerry West, Lawrence Frank, just get him out of there, man. It's time. Y'all ain't got no use for him right now. Y'all not even thinking about his development right now. Let him go somewhere else and let him be a guy. But I'll say for my answer when it comes to a sophomore, this is very basic, but I've been high on this dude ever since he broke out last year at Santa Clara. But Jalen Williams, I love his game. Like, big fan of him. 6'6", big guard, can play make, can facilitate, can pass, can defend, big time wingspan, can play above or below the rim, can run in transition. To me, like, OKC has a lot of talent that they're sitting on. Like, a lot of talent. Like, they're a team that should be like, they're in the play-in this year. I know they lost to Minnesota, but they should be in the mix to be a playoff team this upcoming season too. SGA is a solidified star. You know, I like Josh Giddey too, but to me, like, Jalen Williams should be the clear second option in OKC, no doubt about it in my mind. He's just too talented. It's nothing against Giddey, but Giddey just doesn't have that athleticism. He ain't got that pop like that. He's a hell of a playmaker, Giddey is, but Jalen Williams to me is another guy that I like down the line. I see him being an all-star. There's no doubt about it in my mind. Like, he has it, and so I'm a big time fan about him. How you like Jalen Williams?
But I love it, man, because when he was on, OKC almost made it to the playoffs, man, because he has already shown that he's capable of being the second unit, the second guy next to SGA. And with today's NBA, especially how OKC is built, I think that guy is going to. I saw a photo of him working out. I think, man, that guy's ripped, man. Of course, yeah, in the offseason, you see all types of pictures from guys, but his work ethic is crazy, man. I think he's going to guard 1 to 4 next season. I think in terms of what OKC is going to play, 4 out, maybe 5 out, he can basically guard everyone except the center. So in terms of long-term fit, man, he's the perfect guy to build a franchise around as not the first option, but as a second option, man. And also, I thought about your question: who is your favorite sophomore? He's not a sophomore, man. But when you said Miami Heat, I had to take one of the guys, man. Orlando Robinson, man. That guy. Oh, another steal at Fresno State. I think in terms of his playmaking, an outside shot is easy, but that's what Miami missed, if you ask me. And they brought in K Love. Of course, you have to add rebounding, you have to have shooting from that position. But I think he is one of the biggest steals in undrafted free agency. He worked hard in the G League. He got his guaranteed money, right? He got a
Yep.
standard contract. So
Mhm.
it's only the way up for him. Miami is investing in him. He had to work hard for it. But I think he's going to carve out a serious role, man, as the sixth or seventh option for the Miami Heat. I think with the passing, he's going to impact that team in the minutes without Ben. I think, man, he's a guy. If he averages double digits points, I wouldn't be surprised. In all honesty,
I love that answer. He's technically a sophomore, right? You know, he finally got his first rotation minutes last year.
yeah,
He's going to play a lot more this year. Again, as you mentioned, I think we're one of the best when it just comes to find that undrafted talent and just getting guys and developing them and maximizing their talents. You've seen a whole bunch of guys come through Miami get paid. Like, of course, shout out to Gabe Vincent and Max Strus. But yeah, I love that pick too. I think even Jovic, you know, depending on what happens, I don't know, it's a good chance if we do trade for Damian Lillard, he's probably going to be in that deal. But even if he goes to Portland, like, yeah, he might not have the same opportunity as in Miami, but like, that guy could be an all-star down the league. I don't know how soon. I don't know how fast. I'm not going to sit here and say it's guaranteed, but like, he has the makings to be a really, really good player. That jump shot is real. The size is real. I think the playmaking is a little bit better than I thought it was coming out of where is he from? Is he from
he's from
Slovenia?
Serbia.
Serbia. Okay, there you go. Yeah, so
Yeah, man.
player. How you like
6'11".
You
Yeah, I
like
love
him?
it, man. Pick and roll
Mm-hmm.
playmaker. He can
Mm-hmm.
be the roll man and he can be the shooter, man. It's crazy. He can be the ball handler too. But in terms of the defense, that's what the real issue is with him, man. I think
Yeah.
he's one of those guys that he still has to learn how to make up for the lack of athleticism. As easy as it sounds, but with him is do or die in terms of his career, man. Because if you look at the guys who's coming over from Europe, just like in his mold, defensively, it was also a challenge here. I think that's what made him fall so far because I had him as a top 10 guy 2 years ago. I remember it very well. And Right now, Miami's betting on those guys, and rightfully so, man, because they have no choice. If you have a late first round
Hmm.
pick, you have to swing for the fences, right? In terms of offensive potential, it's off the charts. Just like so, I can see all
Yep.
star potential in him if everything clicks. He finds his role where he's comfortable in, but it's going to take a couple of years, man. And he went to the right spot because Miami is patient. And even if they trade for Lillard, of course, 99% he's gone. But I hope he stays, man, because I think eventually
Yeah,
he's going to be a guy in that rotation.
I agree. So that brings me to our last question, man. It's been a pleasure and an honor. I gotta ask you, what young team are you looking forward to watching the most in the NBA when it comes to just strictly just young talent, like upcoming talent that you see a very bright future? It could be OKC, it could be the Pacers, as we mentioned. What team are you looking forward to watching this upcoming season in the 2023-2024 NBA season?
I'm a bit biased, man. I'm going with the Houston Rockets strictly for Schengen, man, because in terms of long term, I don't know what they're doing right now because they're just stacking talent, talent,
Talent,
talent.
yeah.
But okay, Amen Thompson, Jalen Green, how is that going to work? I'm not really seeing it early. Okay, who's the point guard? It's going to be Amen by default, and he's drafted for that. But to be honest, in that system, especially if his jumper goes in the right direction, I think Houston has other plans for him. But in terms of, if we have to give my real answer, it's not really young talent, but more so who's going to surprise in the league. I think it's the Kings, man. I think there's going to be the
Mm,
second year in a row with home court advantage in the West. And I think this year they're going to go maybe get to the Western Conference Finals, man. I think first year on the coach Mike Brown, he really changed the whole franchise.
yep.
And they went for the NBA ready guy with pick number 4. And he's going to be, if everything continues like this, he's going to be the star in the NBA. So, and with everything what they're doing in the last couple of years, they got a lot of heat trading Halliburton, but trading Halliburton really
Paid off.
brought them to today, man, because Sabonis was the guy they targeted, and they got him. They built around him, and look where they at. They lost to the Warriors. I think, okay, who's the last team that really held the Warriors? Not a lot of teams, right? Of course, the Lakers with
Hmm.
LeBron and Anthony Davis, but the Kings don't have stars like that. So I really
Hmm.
respect them a lot, man. So those two teams, I think the Houston is by default because, to be honest, I don't really have a favorite rebuilding team. If I have to pick one, it's Orlando. We have to
Hmm.
go with my guy Alperen Şengün, man. So
Yeah.
that's what stands for me.
Yeah, man. Hey, Ime Udoka's gonna have his hands full this year. I mean, luckily Shangun is turning into a player, but as you mentioned, I think they're probably gonna have to trade Kevin Porter Jr. Jalen
Yeah,
Green, he's a player. We'll see what happens with him. But Amon Thompson, of course, they added in Dylan Brooks, they added in Fred Van Fleet. So it seems like they're trying to speed up the process, but they really shouldn't be because the young talent that they do have is really, really good. But maybe those vets and Brooks and Van Fleet can come in and help them out. And then with the Kings, I like that a lot too, just because Keegan Murray was only a rookie last year, right? I expect him to be a little bit better as a sophomore. I think even down the line, like he's gonna be a hell of a player. He's already a really good catch and shoot player. Eventually, I expect him to do a little bit more things off the bounce, off catch and shoot situations, and even become a little bit better of a defender as his career continues to, grow and improve. But I love both those two picks, man. And Ersin, I appreciate you, man. This is an honor and a privilege. When the season gets closer, we definitely have to do this again. I cannot
yeah,
wait
for
to have
sure,
you on
brother.
again. It's been an honor. Again, plug your Twitter, shout out shot quality. And yeah, man, we appreciate you being on here for sure.
Yeah, for sure, brother. Thanks for having me on, man. Just like to say, big fan of your podcast, especially when I discovered it, man. I think I have 30 minutes to work and 30 minutes back. I just listen. When I see one, I'm going to listen immediately. So tomorrow I'm going to hear it back myself, so that's going to be funny. Because I'm not really doing this podcasting a lot, but thanks,
Mhm.
man. And for the people that know me, I'm on Twitter with Edemir NBA. I work for Shot Quality. I do most of the social media stuff for them, social media posts on Twitter. And next season, I want to really up my game, man, in terms of writing scouting reports on my Substack. So if you're curious, you can subscribe to that, and more writing scouting reports and watching a lot more film, man. And my next project is, of course, it's a big of a challenge, but I love challenges. It's JUCO basketball, man, because I want to
Mm.
give one guy a shout out
Yep.
who I'm really a fan of, and I think he's going to impact as a freshman Division One player. Actually, Malachi Davis, man, he's going to Arizona State. I think he's going to be one of the biggest surprises of next season, especially if Coach Hurley is going to give him the role that I think he's going to get. 6'4" scoring guard. I think he has to be a little bit more of a better decision maker with the ball in his hands. That's going to be one of the biggest challenges for him. But he's a bucket, man. I'm really a big fan of his game. And again, man, you have to be creative, YouTube, all type of stuff. Luckily, I use the Instead. I can find film on him, but you have to be creative. JUCO, that's one of my projects of discovering talent, because I think at the junior college level, there's a lot of hidden gems where maybe the academics didn't really work in their favor to get to Division One level, or some other things. But there's a lot of talent, man. Because I think if I look at my timeline on Twitter, I barely see people talk about junior college basketball. That's my next challenge, man. But if I
Yeah.
go to the States, which is one of my goals of this season, I will definitely want to go near March and go to the tournament, man, for the junior college as well. So I wanted to go throw that out there. So if people have advice about junior college, hit me up. DMs are always open. You want to talk hoops, but I've been talking for way too long, man. I'm just
No,
grateful and thankful that I come to be on, Kevin, my brother. I love it, man. I think we did a fun episode, man. And it's 3 months till the next season, college basketball, but I hate it, man. I hate the wait. I hate it.
hey, it's almost here, man. It's been a fast off
Yeah,
season, but I love that for you, bro. Like JUCO, it's a dog eat dog world. It's very competitive. Jimmy Butler went to JUCO. It's been some legends that played JUCO basketball. Like
yeah. Jay
it's
Crowder too.
exactly like it's a real grind. It's a lot of guys that are like dying to get to that D1 level. And so I love that for you. I think you're gonna have a lot of fun. Out here in LA, it's a lot of really good junior colleges. So if you make it this way, when you make it this way, we'll definitely go to a game or two so you can experience it for yourself. But all in all, man, again, I appreciate you. Keep doing your thing. You're gonna be one of the best scouts in the world if you're not already. A lot of people don't recognize you
Thanks,
yet, but
brother.
trust me, people will. It's my guy right here, man. Y'all don't even know. I've had a lot of great conversations with this dude. This is just one of a few. And man, y'all just stay in tune with Ersin, man. Go get the Substack. Go support him. He's on his way. Best believe, again, the world might not know about him right now, but they will in the very near future, man. So just believe that all the way from Amsterdam. But this has been another episode of the Kevoo Bandzz Hoops podcast, man. As always, I appreciate you guys for tapping in. Again, salute to my guy Ersin. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, share, all those good things. Leave a review. I will talk to you guys soon. As always, peace and love. Gone.